make 5 whatever agenda. So that changes it.
Welcome to the City Council meeting of Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. We're starting closed session at 5 p.m. Call to order, please.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Carroll?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Here.
Mayor Martinez?
Here. Do we have public comments this evening?
I don't have any requests.
Okay. City Attorney, will you read the item for discussion?
Yes, item number 2, council will be meeting in closed session for a conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2 and/or 3, one potential case, and this arises out of a threat of litigation by Wayne Lamb and Beaumont 600 LLC.
Okay, with that, we'll adjourn to closed session. We are returning from closed session. Do we have any reportable activity?
The council met in closed session, item number 2, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2 and/or 3. One potential case. There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pickney. And with that, we will go to regular session of the March 5th, 2019 City Council meeting. And call to order, please.
Councilmember Lara.
Here.
Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos.
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any action on requests for excused absence? All right, seeing none, Ms. Day, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any adjustments to the agenda today? Any conflict of interest disclosure? All right, with that, we will move to our recognition part of the council meeting. Today we have an RTA centerpiece acknowledgement recognition. I believe Councilmember Carroll would like to call up the recipients.
Thank you. Mr. Parachi and Mr. Clavel, would you please come to the podium? Do we have
Yeah, where's the
certificates?
certificates? They're there.
Thank you. I couldn't be more pleased to be doing this 2 years in a row. I want you to know you started a trend within the Riverside Transit Agency. We now have the community groups that are all across Riverside County that when they compete for the annual Centerpiece Award, they're starting to involve students in their communities. And you were the ones that started it. They were so impressed with the work that you did last year. You did it again this year. We should have won this year. We didn't win this year. We will win next year, I'm sure. And basically, I think they kind of had to spread the award around a little bit this year. So we have, if anybody wants to see it, we have the centerpiece at the back of the room. You did such a great job that RTA Marketing asked if they can have the centerpiece on loan to use whenever they do road shows or community meetings. And as I understand it, Jonathan, so much of the design was your idea.
90%. I just painted it, that's all.
Well,
The design was lovely.
I mean, 2 years in a row. Thank you so much from the community, and I know that the mayor's going to want to say something to you both also. But with that, from the city of Beaumont, for Jonathan, for your contribution of creative thinking and commitment, which in turn showcased a fantastic display in the form of a centerpiece at the 2019 Transportation Now annual event held in Riverside. The inventive imagination is an inspiration to young minds and a true testament to an innovative future. And you're going to have a great future, I know you are. So thank you so much. And Mr. George Parachi, I wish we had 1 million teachers like you. For your mentoring contribution of creative thinking and commitment, which in turn showcased a fantastic display in the form of a centerpiece at the 2019 Transportation Now annual event. The inventive imagination is an inspiration to young minds and a true testament to an innovative future. And I really, truly want to thank you for being such a fantastic teacher and a great leader to the students and a great example.
Well, thank you so much. Mrs. Carroll was so proud of you, Councilmember Carroll, for what you've done and highlighting Beaumont in the Teen Owl Pass meeting. So she was very honored to hand this to you today. So that's a great privilege. And I really, for the youth, Jonathan, that you're showing for the future, it's really refreshing. We thank you so much. You are setting a trend, and these are going to be big shoes to fill in the future, but know that they're your shoes to fill, so and that's very proud. I'm very proud. The council is very proud, and Mr. Parachi, for you, for all your dedication, hours, and your commitment to the students. Thank you so much. So we like to have, you want to come up? We'll take a picture at the end if you like. These seats are a little bigger.
I think you're going to have a lot of these college and everywhere.
And stand here if you would. Picture. Nicole, do you have, or Ashley, who's doing this? Congratulations. And thank you, Mr. Parachi, for all you do.
Jonathan, is that parents for these photos? Okay. And thank you to Jonathan's parents, too, for doing such great work. Thank you.
For recognizing him. He's very dedicated at his schoolwork, and we're hoping that he will be graduating this year, and hopefully he will be going to an engineering school. And thank you for the recommendation. We're hoping that maybe he will be going to Denmark.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
Wonderful.
Very nice. Well, again, congratulations. All right, so a very pleasant way to start the evening tonight. Do we have public comments?
I have no requests.
Okay, so with that, we'll proceed to the consent calendar. Do we have any items requested to be pulled from council? Do we have any requests to speak on any item? No? Okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar, items 1 through 9.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes.
Sorry, Mayor, you made a cut you off.
What's that?
I said I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I didn't even realize it. All right, so very well. So we are now proceeding to the public hearing, item 10. So at this point, we are going to resume from the continuation of the February 19th, 2019 meeting, the duly noticed public hearing relating to the formation proceedings for the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District number 2019-1. The public hearing and formation proceedings will be conducted for the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District number 2019-1. Mr. Pardon?
Thank you, Mayor. This is, again, the continuation of the process we began at our last meeting. We did go ahead and continue that meeting because we were waiting for a certificate from the county as we move forward. So that issue has been addressed. You have all the filed paperwork that you need. So this is creating a CFD 2019-1, which is 3 particular pieces of parcels that are being developed within the Sundance subdivision. With that, we do have Heidi Sheppy with Webb Financial, who is here to be able to present this to you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I have a brief presentation for you to kind of give you an overview of the district, a formation calendar, and then Brian's going to come up and give you some next steps and go over all the kind of legal stuff that's going on this evening. So this development, to remind you, is the last portion of the Sundance community. It has 37 cluster homes, 31 single-family homes and 87 cluster homes in 2 non-contiguous zones. So that means that they're not next to each other. To give you an idea of the geographic location of each zone, I've put a vicinity map on here for you to show you where they are. The boundary map has been recorded at the county, so that process has taken place. There's your reporting number. The RMA and the special taxes. So this one has the 3 special taxes. The first one is the facilities special tax with no escalation. The effective tax rates are between 1.98 and 2%. And the bond issuance will go to finance facilities and not fees. The special tax for public services is in line with the rate that is within the other CFDs that the city has formed with the special tax for public services, and it has an escalation of the greater of CPI or 5% on an annual basis. And there's the special tax for maintenance services, which is per zone, the maintenance that's required within each zone. And each zone will pay for that with an escalator of 2% or CPI on an annual basis. Your formation calendar. So we've done step 1, which was a resolution of intention to establish the CFD. That was the meeting that took place January 15th. This next step is your public hearing and your election, where you will be adopting, if approved, the resolution to form and the resolution to incur bond indebtedness. Your third step will be March 19th, and that's the second reading of the ordinance, which will be introduced this evening. To go over everything in detail, we'll bring Brian up.
Good evening, Mayor Martinez, members of council. Brian Forbath from Stradley Yaca. Good to be here in front of you this evening. So, as I think Heidi mentioned to you tonight, the main steps to do are to conduct the public hearing, take any public testimony or comment, and then there's a couple different action items before you. The first steps are the resolutions to form the CFD and the resolution determining the necessity to incur bonded indebtedness. Assuming you decide to move forward on those 2 resolutions, those resolutions call an election to be held tonight. The election, because we've received certification from the county that there are no registered voters that reside within the boundaries of this property. It will be a landowner election underneath the Mello-Roos Act, and Pardee Homes as the sole property owner will be who is entitled to vote at that election. And Mr. Chambers is here from Pardee and is already ready to cast a ballot or has cast a ballot to city clerk's office. After the election has been held, assuming you decide to move forward, then there would be a resolution certifying the election results, and then at that point there would be the introduction of an ordinance authorizing the levy of the special tax, and then as Heidi mentioned, the next step would be to come back to your subsequent meeting to actually enact that ordinance. Also before you tonight, as part of the resolutions, is a form of an acquisition agreement, and that sets forth the terms pursuant to which the city will acquire completed facilities from Pardee Homes with bond proceeds if and when bonds are ever issued on behalf of the district. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that any of you all have, and answer questions, and the folks from Pardee are here as well.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to continue the public hearing relating to the formation of CFD number 2019-1. We've received the staff report at this time on this matter, and hereby enter into the record of the public hearing. We're asked, is there any members of the public that wish to comment at this time?
There's no request. If you could, the time of the public hearing so I can notate it.
Yeah, so we're continuing the public hearing at 6:15 p.m. with no public. Mr. Parker. Mr. Chambers, would you like to comment?
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, council members, Jeff Chambers, Pardee Homes. There was some question relative to one of these planning areas, which was planning area 13, the cluster product. And I just wanted to let you know that it's been very well received. We opened sales in January, and we're up to almost 20 sales. So I just wanted to pass that on. It's been very, very well received. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. All right, so seeing that there's no public speakers, are there now the point for council discussion? Do we have questions or discussion from the council on the matter? Yeah. Mr. Lauren?
Mr. Forbath, I have a question for you. You indicated just before you closed there that there are no registered owners that reside within the boundaries.
Registered voters.
Registered voters, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so because of that, then the vote goes to
The property owners within the property.
property owners.
With each property owner having one vote for each acre of property they own or portion thereof within the district. And Party has, owns all the property in the district, so they will cast a ballot in favor of all that property.
Okay, just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that was clear. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Further discussion? Questions? No? All right. If not, I ask the city clerk, have we received any written protest to any of the matters addressed in this public hearing from a registered voter or landowner, owner of more than 50% of the acreage located within the Community Facilities District 2019-1?
We have received 0 protests.
Okay. If there are no further comments from the public or members of the council, then I hereby close the public hearing at 6:17 p.m. And I will entertain a motion on 1 and 2. I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution of the City Council establishing the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District number 2019-1, authorizing the levy of special taxes and calling any election therein, and resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont acting as the legislative body of the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District number 2019-1, determining the necessity to incur bonded indebtedness within the Community Facilities District and calling elections therein. I'll entertain a motion.
We don't need to include the waive the full reading parts of those?
We're going to do for 1 and 2 right now, we're asking for.
I know, I'm just saying on 1 and 2 here, it talks about waiving the full.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
so
think
we'll
it's
just read
understood
this.
that the motion would include waiving the full reading.
Okay, I'll so move then.
I'll second.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Okay, so the motion has been made and approved. The resolutions that we have just adopted call for an election within CFD number 2019-1 to authorize the levy of the special tax, the incurring of bonded indebtedness, and the approval of the appropriations limit for CFD 2019-1, which is to be held at this time by the city clerk.
All ballots have been cast in connection with the election for CFD number 2019-1, and the election is now closed. Each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the elections for CFD number 2019-1.
With that, then, oh, wait.
Proposition A, shall City of Beaumont Community Facilities District 2019-1 incur an indebtedness and issue bonds for Community Facilities District in the maximum principal amount of $4 million, with interest at a rate or rates not to exceed the maximum interest rate permitted by law to finance the facilities and incidental expenses described in resolution number 2019-1 for the City Council of the City of Beaumont. That was approved. Proposition B, shall a special tax with a rate and method of apportionment as provided in that resolution entitled Resolution of the City Council Establishing the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District number 2019-1, authorizing the levy of special taxes and calling an election therein, adopted by the City Council of the City of Beaumont for the Community Facilities District on February 19th, 2019, be levied to pay for the facilities, incidental expenses, maintenance service, and public services, and the principal of and interest on bonds issued to finance the facilities and incidental expenses, and the other purposes described in resolution number 2019-1. That was approved. Proposition C, for each year commencing with fiscal year 2018-19, shall the appropriations limit as defined by subdivision H of section 8 of Article 13B of the California Constitution for the Community Facilities District be an amount equal to $2 million. That was approved also.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion for item 4 of item 10, the resolution of the City Council acting in its capacity as a legislative body of the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District number 2019-1, certifying the results of the February 19, 2019 special tax and bond elections.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White?
Yeah, I hate to be a stickler, but do we need to say the March 5th?
Yeah, we probably should.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So I'll stand corrected for March 5th, 2019 special tax and bond elections.
Yes.
Councilmember White, yes. Councilmember Lara?
Yes, as amended.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes, as amended. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. White. The resolution certifying the results of the election for CFD 2019-1 then is now passed, and I would now ask the clerk to conduct the first reading of the ordinance relating to CFD number 2019, which would authorize his levy of the special tax in accordance with the special tax formula approved by the landowners within the district at the election for the CFD 2019-1.
I would ask if you could in your motion to waive the first full reading unless you would like me to read the entire.
No, please. This title only.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion then to waive the first full reading of the ordinance of the City Council, City of Beaumont, acting in its capacity as a legislative body of the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District 2019-1, authorizing the levy of a special tax within the Community Facilities District.
I'll second that. Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. So at this time, is there any further business related to this item? Good. All right. With that, then, we will move on to action items. Action item 11, the approval of the acquisition agreement in connection with Community Facilities District number 2019, the district.
Yeah, and this element actually follows on now that we have moved forward with the formation and the creation of 2019-1. We have now the acquisition agreement, which sets forth the parameters by which we would provide for reimbursement should we proceed forward with any bond proceeds for eligible reimbursements back to the developer. So again, this will go towards specific capital improvements that qualify under the terms of this acquisition agreement. So, Mr. Forbath, I don't know if there's anything else you need to add.
The only thing I would, that was perfect. The only thing I would add is just the, because the improvements, the district finances the improvements, but the improvements are owned by the city. And so that's why the city acting on its behalf, on its own behalf, will enter into the acquisition agreement in addition to the district. So that's why there's a second item. Thank you.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not.
Okay. Do we have questions or discussion from council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve as an action item an action of the City Council of the City of Beaumont to authorize the execution and delivery of the acquisition agreement relating to Community Facilities District number 2019-1 of the City of Beaumont in approving certain documents and taking certain other actions in connection therewith.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right. With that, we move to action item 12, contract extensions for special counsel services. Authorize the city manager to execute contracts with an extension of 3 one-year term limits for special counsel services with the following 4 firms: Burke, Williams, and Sorensen, LLP, Liebert, Cassidy, Whitmore, Lewis, Brisbois, Basgard, and Smith, LLP, and Manning and Cass.
So just briefly, Your Honor, as indicated in the staff report, in November of 2017, the staff issued a request for proposal for special counsel services, and on February 6, 2018, the council accepted 4 proposals. Those were the 4 firms listed. They're all outstanding law firms. There are situations where I, as the city attorney, may have a conflict, and we've had that occur this year. And Eric Vale from the Burke Williams Sorensen firm has stepped in to represent the city in that matter where I've declared a conflict. We haven't worked with the Liebert Cassidy firm, but their area of expertise is labor and employment, and should we have a conflict situation or need co-counsel, they would be there. Louis Brisbois does assist the city with some matters related to the police department, and the same with Manning and Cass. They specialize in that field. And the idea of having gone through this RFP process was that we wanted to have sort of panel counsel in the event of a conflict or in the event that we needed somebody that was specialized to assist the city, where we wouldn't be in a situation where we had to go out to a rushed RFP or come to you without sufficient time to go through an RFP where we've got a case pending and we need either specialized counsel or somebody to cover a conflict, and we have to tell you that we've got exigent circumstances. So we wanted to avoid that, and that's why we went through this process of going through an RFP, giving you the chance to vet the firms. And so we did that, and these four the law firms were approved by the council. And so this is just before you as part of the annual approval process of approving their contract going forward for another year.
All right, thank you. We have public comment?
No requests.
Okay. Questions, comments from the council?
I have
Mr. White?
So, Mr. Pinckney, we did go out to bid or RFP on these a year ago, and we're extending these, and that is within our ordinances to extend them the way that we're doing it, correct?
Absolutely, it is. I could read you the language if you'd like.
Just to be dot the T's and cross
You
the
bet.
I's.
So what your ordinance provides on the issue of the term of professional service agreements is the term of any professional services contract awarded shall be a maximum of 5 years. Contracts shall be submitted to the City Council annually for approval, renewal, termination, non-renewal, or extension. That's what's occurring here. Extension of a contract beyond the initial term shall be approved by a 4/5 vote of the City Council. And then the contract shall not contain an evergreen clause. So the way I read that ordinance is that the initial term can be up to 5 years. It still comes back before you every year for your approval, renewal, termination, non-renewal, or extension. And that if you wanted at some point to extend these beyond, let's say, 5 years, it would require a 4/5 vote of the council to do so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Pinckney, it doesn't cost the city anything if we don't use the services, correct? There's no retainer fee or anything.
No, it's as needed. The rates are very competitive for the quality of lawyers that have been previously vetted and selected by the council. The attorneys that we've worked with when we have needed them, it's on an as-needed basis. If we need them, then we pay the hourly rate that's posted in the staff report. And they've done an excellent job for the city when we've called upon them and needed them.
Any further? Ms. Carroll?
And you doing this preparation where you bring it to our attention for the renewal, as you mentioned, keeps us out of the exigent circumstances where the whole decision would be compressed. We would not be able to do the RFP and the evaluation process that we are able to do that's put into this list of names, correct?
Yeah, we never want to be in a situation where, and I think we've had these in the past, in the first couple of years when we were dealing with things that were popping up and we didn't have time to go out through an RFP process. And you had a lot of contracts that came before you with exigent circumstances because we didn't have the time to go through an RFP process. Here, you've done that. And this allows you to avoid being in a situation where we come to you in the heat of the moment and tell you we need specialized services. That could happen. That could still happen if we needed some specialty services and these firms didn't provide that. We tried to pick a wide variety of firms that would cover the full spectrum, but if that ever happened, we'd let you know, but we're trying to avoid that. And then in terms of keeping track of in the terms of the contract, the city clerk's office maintains a schedule of when these contracts expire so that they come before you at least once a year. And that's what we understood the council wanted, is that you wanted to see these once a year so that you wouldn't forget about them.
Sure. Is there any change in the rates with this extension?
No. Let me just,
I think there were a couple minor adjustments to rates.
oh, were there? Okay. I didn't think there were. I apologize. I misspoke. Let me just look at the adjustments. Okay, so Burke Williams Sorensen does not have a change in their rate. And I can't really tell.
It was Liebert Cassidy.
It was Liebert Cassidy, okay.
Yes.
We have not used them. And I think it's unlikely that we will need them, but if we need them, they're there.
But even so, it would be minor rate increases.
It was a minor rate increase.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the city manager, whoops, have I got the wrong, no, I got the wrong. Authorize the city manager to execute contracts with an extension of 3 one-year terms for special counsel services with the following 4 firms: Burke, Williams, and Sorensen, LLP, Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore, Lewis, Brisbois, Biscard and Smith, LLP, and Manning and Cass.
I'll second.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Councilmember Lara.
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. All right, with that, we move to action item 13, to receive an update from city staff regarding the proposed pass area transit provider analysis to be conducted by the Riverside County Transportation Commission, or CTC, and provide direction to city council. These staffs.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is really twofold. There's a portion of it is regarding the proposed Pasta area transit study that is to be conducted by Riverside County Transportation Commission, also known as RCTC, and provide direction to us on that study. And then the second portion of this is to discuss the short-range transit plan, fiscal year 1920, and direction on Route 2, specifically removing Route 2 from the city of Banning. I want to point out that included in your staff report is not only the study and staff's recommended comments, but we've also included a list of all of the things that this agency has done in previous years in support of regional transportation services in the Pass area. And I might add that there are numerous ways that we have shown that we do support regional transportation. The other thing I'd like to point out is that we as an operator are mandated by the Transportation Development Act of 1971. Article 2 states in part, providing an integrated and coordinated system to meet the public transportation needs of an entire county will benefit the county as a whole. Our mission has been and continues to be to ensure that transit-dependent riders and citizens who desire a viable transportation alternative have clean, reliable options. It is imperative that the various service providers operate in a coordinated manner. Attached is an exhibit showing our history and commitment, as I spoke earlier. We are contemplating recommendations for amendments to Beaumont's fixed routes, specifically the termination of Route 2. This is the primary Beaumont route that enters the city of Limits. It crosses Highland Springs Avenue. We do have one other route that goes into the city of Banning one time only during peak service, and that route is Route 4. And that is targeting middle and senior students that attend Beaumont Unified. That area that we transport in is Beaumont Unified School District. It's Snow Creek, for those of you that are familiar with that. It used to be called Midway, but that area is Beaumont Unified School District boundaries, and therefore we do provide one loop in the morning for peak service. We have analyzed options to discontinue Route 2 and coordinate with the City of Banning to ensure that Beaumont's transit-dependent riders that need to travel to social services offices that are only located in Banning, not in Beaumont, that they can maintain reliable service. Route 2 has long been a concern of the City of Banning, who have felt that this route has deprived them of ridership and transit revenue. So we have drafted a proposal. It's been forwarded to the City of Banning, and it's attached to this report. Our recommendation tonight is that we request City Council provide additional comments or amendments to those submitted to RCTC regarding the proposed pass area transit provider analysis. In addition, we are requesting direction regarding the amendment to the SRTP and specifically pursuant to the termination of Beaumont Route 2, which would be effective July 1st in next fiscal year. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Public comment?
I don't have any requests.
Okay, open to council discussion, comments? You want to start?
All right, I'll start.
So there's so much here, okay.
I was trying to let someone else go first, but so the process is they've put together attachment 1, which is their plan for an analysis, and I say their, I mean the RCTC, correct?
Correct.
And that involves bringing the 3 cities, Beaumont, Banning, and Calamasa, even though Calamasa does not have any transit right now.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not really happy with the way they presented the city of Beaumont or the city of Calamasa and how we serviced Beaumont. I think they left a lot of stuff out. But so we addressed some of those issues with the city of Beaumont comments regarding their analysis. And we submitted that already, correct?
Todd, was it emailed yet? I think we asked for an extension until after this meeting tonight. We want to add to the comments.
Okay, so these are the comments up here that we are going to be submitting to them. Do you know if the plan would end up getting approved by the RCTC Commission?
I actually asked John Standiford that same question. Ultimately, what is going to happen if RCTC is spearheading this project? It will go before the commission, and he did confirm that. Okay. I did ask that each of the city councils hear the item before it goes to the commission so that we have the opportunity to hear it here with our passengers and our constituents. I asked what would happen once RCTC reviews the study as a board. It's my understanding that it would be an informational item only. My concern was, will we as an operator be mandated to follow whatever the study produces? That could be detrimental to the city of Beaumont if whatever the study shows is not conducive to what our transit-dependent riders need. Okay. And his response was it would be an informational item and that no, we would not be, in other words, would our funding be cut? And he said no.
Okay, and you, I think you were here, maybe not, at our last meeting when I reported what had happened at the RCTC workshop regarding the COA?
I wasn't in the room, but I was here listening, yes. Okay.
So, it was my understanding that, just to refresh those who may not have known, that our Mayor Welch came in and said we don't need the cost, COA, what's that stand for? Cost of?
Comprehensive operations
Comprehensive
analysis.
And he came up to me and said, we don't need that, correct? And I said, no, I think we need it. We've talked about it for 2 years now. And he'd already told RCTC we didn't need it. And then after we talked for a little bit, we went and told RCTC we did need it. And it was continued and put up in, they had a PowerPoint for the whole group, and the COA showed up in there, and they were all proud that they were going to do this. And then all of a sudden, things have changed. So I'm not real happy with that, because we've been working on this for 2 years now, and we have done everything we can to bend over backwards to try and work out a solution, as you know, for Banning. And we've gotten a lot of lip service that Banning was willing to move forward. And then they would come back and say, sorry, we changed our minds. And, you know, it's just frustrating to see this come this way to the one agency who's been doing everything we can to solve this and to work through this. And now they're putting together a scope here that has nothing to do with any comprehensive operation analysis. And the way I read this is they're basically going to come and tell us, you know, here's where we think you should go. Whether or not that's binding or whether or not we're required to do that, I'm getting sick and tired of our neighbors assuming that we're still the bad guys in Beaumont, and when we've been doing everything we can to move this pass area forward. I would like the rest of us to consider, you know, allowing, you know, it's not like we can stop this anyways, but cooperating with this process, having it go forward. But I think we should seriously consider doing our own comprehensive operation analysis, because something that is going to happen is this is going to come back to us, and I don't think they're doing, I mean, it specifically says, or maybe that was the notes in the staff, that it was not a comprehensive operation analysis, correct?
Correct, and actually, if I might read the actual purpose.
Okay.
The purpose of this analysis is not to conduct an in-depth comprehensive operational analysis that recommends service improvements, but rather to determine whether the operating structure lends itself to providing sustainable transit service in the pass area. And that alone is an issue. If you don't know if you have transit-dependent residents, how do you build a study without that data? That data is critical. If we don't have the ridership, how do we determine whether or not a JPA or a contractor is even relevant?
And to me, what's an indication of this is heading not in the best direction for Beaumont is that Calamasa is weighing in. Calamasa does not have a transit program. I don't think they've had one as long as I can remember. And we did our best to accommodate them. So, and what's really frustrating is I'm the RCTC commissioner, and I never saw this coming this way. And actually, I was in a meeting with, on the toll policy committee with Ann Meyer the day that I was first told about this. It's been an hour and a half with her. She never brought this up at all. And it's a complete change in what they had told the entire RCTC, that we were going with the cost, with the comprehensive operation analysis, the COA. So I think we should continue to move forward without banning, you know, and because I think at some point when they come back to us, I mean, I think whenever this gets done, they're going to come back to us and say, well, we think you guys should do X, Y, Z. And we're going to say, okay, so what's your data? What's your backup on that? And I'd rather be in a position to have the data that says, you know what, we went ahead and we looked at it, and there's some things that we've talked about doing, more regional routes and stuff like that, that I don't think they're going to consider because we're really not a seat at the table. So I'll stop venting at this point, but I'm frustrated with the way this has come down, and I think that we should continue to move forward on our own. I don't know how they do a pass area transit without Beaumont. I mean, Calamasa doesn't have one, who's banning going to connect to if it's not Beaumont? So, what's that?
They can connect to Calamasa.
There you go. Okay, well, maybe that'll be an option. I just would rather be armed with the data. I know there's a cost, but we've been talking about doing this for 2 or 3 years now. We tried to do it with banning. RTA said they'd come in and pay for it. RCTC said they would pay for it. And I think it's about time we just start doing this ourselves. So that's my opinion.
Councilmember.
I'll take over the ranting where he left off. No, I don't mean that literally. However, there's a very valid point that what I'm afraid will end up at the end, I hesitate to even call it a study. It's not a study. It's some review. It's not a study because a study needs data. Right. And a study needs, done properly, needs for all of the participants to be involved in the mission and the scope. And I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the things that I'm very concerned about is they will arrive at a conclusion. And yes, in fact, you're correct. We don't have to go along with it. And then Beaumont is the one that won't agree to something that supposedly is being wrapped in ribbon as if it's a true study, when in fact we know it's not. And so it's a bit of a setup. So you really can't win either way. You can't win if you just go along with whatever they say that we really didn't have early input to, and you won't win if you don't go along with it. Because then it will be Beaumont that won't go along with it, and then supposedly the other communities may embrace it. So I'm concerned that there's no good answer at the end of this ride, no pun intended. The other thing that I'm concerned with, and Councilmember White brought this up and got pretty close to it, is, and correct me if I say anything wrong here, Elizabeth, but it's my understanding that the meeting was on the 21st or the 22nd?
The 21st.
Yeah, the 21st. So on the 20th, I think late in the day on the 20th, you got a document that was considered supposedly the scope and mission of what this review is, correct?
It's actually the document that's in your staff report.
Yes.
That's what we received
Yeah, I'm not calling it a study.
The night before.
Yeah. So the night before, you get this delivered to you, but somehow or other, the night before, it's got a whole paragraph that looks like it's composed by Calamasa. So I can't help but get the feeling that we were again excluded from the party that was going to provide input into the mission and the scope and making sure that this was going to hit a target that was going to be beneficial to all. So I think we were sort of left out of the input phase to that document. So now we're basically in the output phase. We didn't get the input phase. And we get to show up at the meeting, so we get to bring some documentation, we get to talk. But very few people at the end of the ride are going to know anything much we said unless we try to make sure that it's documented along the way. Do we owe Banning any money for transit?
No, actually, Banning owes us a couple thousand.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So, so in your, and I appreciate the summary of all the things that we've done that have been proactive to provide cooperation here in the past. So I guess you should have added a detail to that, that our cooperation is that we have not put that into a debtor's cycle for the money that's owed. So I'm really kind of mad at them because they basically are acting kind of like the Mean Girls Club that doesn't let you sit at the table in the cafeteria. And that's unnecessary. because this is not about the officials, and it's not about any of us that are in the room, hardly. It's really about the people that, some of them can barely afford to get to work. Some of them have trouble getting transportation to go shopping. It's getting pretty expensive to drive a car. Supposedly, we are proponents of public transit. And anytime you try to make it dysfunctional, you're not proponents of public transit. So I'm very concerned that there's a little bit of dysfunction fed into the early part of this process. I also agree that we need to do our own COA. I don't want to take our ball and go home. That's not the point. The point is that this is not a data-driven study. It's a setup review, and we need data. Because the only thing that anybody's ever going to believe, we do everything that we can to try to cooperate with both sides of our community, and we do not always get acknowledged for it, and that's about as nicely as I can put it. So I'm a supporter of the COA.
Well, Councilmember White and Councilmember Carroll have covered quite a few of the concerns. Looking through the past area transit provider analysis, as they were calling it, I just found it interesting that the two cities that actually have a transit operation end up with a paragraph of the purpose, and one city that has no transit whatsoever ends up with 2 paragraphs of their purpose, and basically that demean what our efforts were to establish Route 136. And if memory serves me, that route was an experiment. We tested it. It didn't support itself. But if I'm not mistaken, you went to City of Calamasa to see if they would help support that financially, and they declined. Is that correct?
Correct. And that route did run for a full 2 years.
And there was revenue that was lost on that route. Did the City of Calamasa make any effort to reimburse the City of Beaumont for the lost revenue?
We didn't meet the revenue target. So for what I proposed was that Calamasa meet the revenue target to continue the operations.
And they refused.
Because after 2 years, the route would no longer be exempt, and we would be mandated to meet the fare box of 10%, and I think we were landing around 4 or 5% after 2 years.
So in short,
So the proposal was to make up the difference.
Calamasa did not approve that, correct?
Correct.
Yet they're part of this proposal here. At least that's what it looks like. They want them to be included as a stakeholder.
Correct.
With no financial penalties or concerns. I guess the other concern I have is in here they talk about the concern that the demand for service will outpace financial operating capital. I know it's been stated before, but I think the only way that you can address that concern is with the COA.
Correct.
Which will give you the data to support where that ridership is, what to look for in the future, where maybe the routes should be going. And Councilmember White referenced a regional approach, which I also support and think the one that we have to San Bernardino seems to be very popular.
Our commuter link routes year to date from July 1 to today are up 28% from that same time period last fiscal year. Regional transportation is the growth.
Right. Does the City of Benning offer a commuter route like that?
No.
Has the City of Benning done anything different with their transit operation? Look at different routes, look at different ways to go places, or do things like you've provided recently?
They've changed some of their routes and the directions, but very minimal to my knowledge.
Okay. Well, I guess at this point, do we have to participate in this? I guess there's no, either way, no matter what we do, I think Councilmember Carroll indicated we're not going to look like we're going to be cast in a bad light again, which is unfortunate. But I too support doing our own COA and looking at what we need to do to provide that service to our commuters. That's the main thing. I think that we need to, this doesn't seem to focus on them as much as I think our own COA would, and provide the best routes available to them. So that's my thoughts.
I do want to point out that every transit operator does a COA periodically. That is where you find out where you need to go. That
Right.
is your roadmap. And it is very common for transit operators to do them, whether they do them every 5 to 10 years, they do updates every couple years, minimal updates. I know Omnitrans does updates every couple years, but they do it in-house. They're a lot bigger than we are. We would not be able to do a COA in-house. It's just not feasible. And for those of you that don't know, a COA is really on-board data collection. We spend an entire week or 10 days with one person on each bus from the time it goes into service until the time that bus driver parks the bus in the yard. There is a body on that bus counting boardings and alightings. Where do people get on? Where do people get off? Where do people get on? Where do people get off? Taking demographic data. Where do they live? How much do they make? Things like that. It is an intense exercise, but it's the only way to truly get your census of your transit passengers.
Real quick, how much were we asking Calamasa to come up with to pay the difference?
I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but it was to meet the 10% fare.
Of just that one route?
Just that route,
Okay.
correct.
I have another question, but it'll be my turn.
All right, so we'll go with one.
On my side, it's really, create collect our own data and everything, and everybody really explained well on the, what's going on. And I do, believe that we could move on the, doing the COA on this. So that's the way I see it.
I have a question because it's perplexed me ever since I read the document. It seems to me that the whole premise for this committee is that there's a problem with past transportation that has to be resolved. And this committee is going to do, as the word says, an analysis to figure out what the problems are, what the recommended solutions are. So I have to tell you, I have absolutely no clue as to why they threw in rail. If you're looking at, you're bleeding from a wound because you have a problem, the rail, not that I'm not supportive of rail, I think rail's a great idea, but it seems to me that that's, I don't know, if I did a analysis in the room, everybody would say probably it's 10 years out, it's 8 years out, it's whatever. So here we have this analysis that's looking supposedly at problems today and solutions today and how to get people to their jobs and this and that, and somehow or other rail is thrown in as a component. I feel rail should be evaluated, but in this, I'm not sure why it was put in there. I know you don't know the answer to that because you don't read minds. And you weren't invited to the party to help develop the document. So, but I just find it an odd mix to put rail in there, but you don't invite the city that's in the middle of the two communities that has to do with the most buses and the most people, but you put rail in there, but you don't let us write a paragraph. I'm perplexed. So now you're perplexed too, now that I brought that up. So that does bother me. The other thing is, and one of the things you pointed out is, when you do a COA and when you do a good analysis and you really have your data, you're paying attention to the people getting on the bus and you're doing all the documentation. So as part of that documentation, you're also paying attention to whether it's a senior rider or a young person or a middle-aged person. I don't want to leave anybody out here. But it doesn't always translate that if you're planning on getting a house in a community at some time in the future, that those people are going to get on the bus, right?
Correct.
So I'm not sure why, in addition to rail being thrown in as an odd component in this analysis that's not really a COA and was never intended to be, because it was pulled off the table without our knowledge, there's also some equation where if I'm going to have 5,000 houses in the future, that means I have great weight in what the problem is today, when there's no connection necessarily in the data and the science of that house actually translating to riders. Am I missing something?
No, Councilmember Carroll, you're exactly correct. We have an entire community, Fairway Canyon, that has no passenger base other than peak in the morning and in the afternoon. And those are youth riders that need to get to school. We did run a route through that community, and we had 0 passengers other than to and from school. And so we discontinued that service because we had like the 136, we had buses driving empty, and we only get 2 years to sustain service on a route before RCTC says, what are you going to do? We can't continue to fund a route that isn't sustainable. And so you're correct. Houses do not equate to passengers.
And I can also see, one of the things that I pay attention to when I'm watching transportation trends is that as the population ages, now I am including myself, as it ages, some people choose to give up their cars to get to their medical appointments and do the things that they need to do. It gets expensive for a car. Sometimes your insurance rates go up after a particular age, et cetera. So it doesn't, so an aging population that may need transportation greater needs in the future doesn't necessarily translate to new houses, right?
Right.
Thanks.
Well, I let everybody go because I'm cooling down because I'm so upset. I'm just really dissatisfied with the RCTC approach. I mean, I believe that they really failed to act as an impartial entity. I think they got caught up in municipal politics, and I think it's a disservice to the residents, not only of Beaumont, but Banning as well. And it's very disappointing to see that, especially if they scrap the whole COA process. You look at this, which I call a high school term paper, because it surely has no analysis here. But they mention that they're going to look at operating structure without looking at operational analysis. They mention here that they're going to look at demographic without a demographics of the COA. They mentioned that they're going to look at past COA. Well, if they're going to look at a past COA, then how about doing a current COA as well? So it's a bogus thing, and I'm really disappointed with that approach. My concern now is that we make sure that we, as a council and as a city, voice to RCT our disapproval with this, because I approve going with our own COA, and I approve going with the Route 2 change. But I want to make sure that we've put out there in public and to the RCTC that this is why. And we want to make sure we're pushing that absence of the COA on this. And again, I don't even know what to call it. So my question for you, Mr. Lloyd, is as you go back, Mr. White, as you go back to RCTC, are we planning to make a comment? We have comment periods at RCTC. Maybe we'll talk about that in private and how we want to go about that. But I do think it's important that the city makes its voice to let those entities know that, I mean, we were cut out. And if we're going to bypass an executive committee member on decisions like this, what else are we going to lose our voice in? And I think it's implorable.
No, I absolutely have some words for him.
So anyway, so that's my position. But anyway, so we can move on. What is this, a receive and file? Is there direction here?
Can we discuss Route 2?
Oh, yes, I'm going to Route 2. That was where I was leading to. So.
And that we'll add to the additional comments that we're going to go ahead with our own COA.
I'm sorry?
We'll add to the additional comments that you're sending that we're going to go ahead and proceed with our own COA.
Absolutely. So moving on to the Route 2, as you know, this has been a request from the city of Banning, and we have worked diligently with them to figure out a different manner of growing both operations without discontinuing what we call in the transit world a trunk route. A trunk route is, that is your prime route. That is the route that moves back and forth through your downtowns. RTA's Route 1 is an example of a trunk route. It is in a key area, metropolitan, urban, whatever you want to call it. A trunk route is key to the filtering routes that connect with it. Route 2 was designed by the previous COA to specifically move Beaumont residents into Banning and then to Calamasa. The design was 2 buses from Beaumont and 2 buses from Banning. 4 buses, every 30 minutes you can walk out to your main arterial and you can catch a bus. And it will take you to the key areas within that region. It was designed, in my opinion, flawlessly, and it was through heavy data analysis that route was designed. Shortly after that, Banning chose not to continue service in Beaumont, rather stopping in the commercial area of Beaumont, the Walmart hospital area, and then continuing back into Banning and then on to Cabazon. And what that did was it left the Beaumont side of that trunk route, Beaumont Avenue and 6th Street, with only an hour, every hour service. So the Banning from Highland Springs east was every 30 minutes. Beaumont from Cougar Way to Highland Springs was every hour. And here's what we found out very quickly. Beaumont residents that get on the Route 2 bus that are going to social services have no choice but to catch a Route 2 bus to get home because Banning's Route 1 no longer comes this way. And early on, just so you know, we were all Route 1. All 4 buses were Route 1, so there was this crossover. Nobody knew if it was a Banning bus or a Beaumont bus. When Banning removed themselves from the Beaumont side of that trunk route, our Beaumont residents were forced to get on a Beaumont bus. So if they're standing at the DMV or they're standing at DPSS on Ramsey in Banning and the Route 1 bus comes by, they have no choice but to let that bus pass them up because it will not take them home. Only the Route 2 buses will take them home. And so we saw some discrepancy in passengers standing on Ramsey not wanting to get on the Route 1 bus. And I think that's important to note because the original design of this trunk route worked. It was after removing a portion of it, cutting off a leg, if you will, that it started to unravel a little bit. The other point that I wanted to make with the Route 2, this will only work if we remove Route 2 from Banning. This will only work for our passengers if we enter into a transfer agreement. And we already have one with RTA. It was brought to council previously and you approved it. We have one with Omnitrans. We have one with Victor Valley Transit Authority, which is the high desert. These are common agreements that all operators have amongst themselves to get people from point A to point B, crossing county lines, etc. This will only work for our passengers. Our passengers will not get on the bus and they will not have transportation if they have to pay twice. If they have to pay a Beaumont driver, transfer at Walmart, and pay a Banning driver, it will not work. And so it's imperative that if we do decide to go in this direction, that we have that agreement so that we can exchange passengers with only one fee. They pay Beaumont, they get a free transfer to Banning. When they come home, they pay Banning, and they get a free transfer to a Beaumont bus. I included in your packet to validate my theory. If you look on the City of Beaumont 2019 SRTP proposal to address Route 2, there's a map included, and it shows you low-income communities. This is the Beaumont corridor.
It's attachment 4.
Attachment 4, correct. There is a theory from some that we don't have low-income families in Beaumont, that we don't have disadvantaged families in Beaumont, that our demographics are different, that we have wealthier, if you will, families. That is absolutely incorrect. This is taken off of the census website. We have low-income families, and they are in the Beaumont corridor, and they are in the downtown area. And those are the people that need to get to DPSS and social services and help and food banks. So the very last 2 pages of your packet is the proposal from Beaumont to Banning. It was sent to the Banning City Manager, and it was sent to the Banning Community Services Director. I did speak with the Banning Community Services Director, and I do have a tentative agreement to accept a transfer at Walmart. However, there's a possibility that Banning's going to change their routes again, and they would like to discuss more than 2 buses every hour. They're moving in a direction where they're going to have 2 buses on one of their routes, and they would like us to entertain 3 buses every hour coming to Walmart from Banning.
Mayor, I have a couple questions.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So looking at route, well, first of all, if I see a Banning bus going south on Highland Springs from Ramsey or 6th Street, their destination right now is Walmart?
Correct.
Okay. And how many an hour are going to Walmart now from Banning?
2.
Okay. Because today, I was driving on Highlands Springs, going that direction, and there were 2 Banning buses right next to each other, and they were following each other underneath the freeway. So I guess the 2 buses were both going to Walmart at the exact same time within 5 feet of each other?
That does occur, in my analysis, that does occur, I think, 3 or 4 times throughout the day.
Okay.
Where Route 1 and their Route 5-6 combo gets to Walmart within a few minutes of each other.
So just to make sure I understand what you're showing me here in this Route 2 image, we would be ceasing our operation going Route 2 into Banning. So what are you showing me here then? You're showing me that our Route 2 now just drops them off at Walmart, and then they have to get on a Banning bus. So this is really not showing that we're going into Banning anymore, correct?
Are you looking at this?
Yes.
This is the current route map.
Okay. Okay.
We have not designed the new route
Okay.
pending this discussion.
That's what I wanted to, that's what I was trying to clarify then. Is there any way that we do, I mean, DPSS is at the very end, the very eastern end of there. Aren't we doing a direct route from Walmart to DPSS, not going through Banning?
Not at this time, no. DPS, there's several locations in Banning. There's one on,
We're doing something to the outlet store. Don't we have some type of direct route?
Sunline is providing that right now, and We're in communication with Sunline about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Sunline does have a bus that is an express bus from Walmart to the casino before it goes to the desert.
And I know we don't have a COA, it would be nice when we have one. But the people that are going to DPSS, are they going at the same time every day? A whole group of people going? Is it all day long? I mean, is there a way that we could just have a couple trips that go straight there and we don't even go through come back the backside of Banning? But
We could get on the freeway and go directly there, but there are a couple DPSSs. And they're, one's on the west side of Banning and the other's on the far east side of Banning.
I'm just suggesting if they're not going to be agreeable to doing the transfers, that we still have an obligation to get people of Beaumont over to where they need to get to go.
Absolutely.
Again, you know, we spent 2 years trying to fix this and offered them everything. We said, we'll do whatever you want. We'll let you run it. We'll do whatever. And they just do not want to work with us. So, anyways, I just mainly wanted to clarify that this is not the proposed Route 2. It's our last.
No, yeah, this is the current route. And you can see when I talk about the trunk route, it really stays to the arterials in each city.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments? Okay, that's clear.
I'm confused on a couple of points. Now, I've watched the Banning buses as they turn on Highland Springs, and they're on their way to Walmart, I assume. But they do stop at Food for Less, right?
Correct. We actually moved that stop to accommodate Banning.
Yeah.
And we paid the traffic engineer, and we did the study, and we moved the stop.
Is that in your summary?
It is.
Okay, I missed it, sorry.
And that's where the 2 buses I saw were, they were at that
Yeah.
stop together.
Yeah.
We did a traffic study with a traffic engineer at our cost.
And there's quite a few people that I see getting on and off there. So now it's a rumor, but I want you to tell me what your thoughts are on it. When we were doing 2x2s, which we did not schedule at times that Banning would have trouble meeting, but as has been a rumor that I've also heard. But when we were doing 2x2s for a while, one of the council members from Banning said to me that they had followed a Beaumont bus, and that they did that frequently, and that they followed Beaumont buses into Banning, and Beaumont buses were stopping all over the place and picking up their Banning passengers as they were driving through Banning.
Would you like me to comment?
Anything that will make me sleep better tonight with a response to that?
My first question would be, if you did not poll the passenger, how do you know they're a Banning passenger? Standing at a Banning bus stop does not make that person a Banning passenger no more than standing at a Calamasa bus stop makes them a Calamasa passenger. There is a high number of people at Banning bus stops that come from Cabazon, that come from Beaumont, that come from San Bernardino on our commuter link. Unless you're actually polling the passenger as they get on, asking them, where did you come from, where are you going, how are you getting there, how are you getting home, how old are you, how much money do you make, you're not getting true data. Visually seeing somebody get on a bus doesn't give you that data. All it tells you is that person got on the bus at X stop.
So someone following in their car is not a ridership study?
Not at all.
Is what you're saying?
Not at all. And if that person was following the bus westbound, I would argue that that was probably a Beaumont resident that needed to get home because they couldn't ride Route 1.
And as I'm reading through your documentation, so one of the things that you are recommending or considering is doing a transfer agreement where there's a transfer pass, and you mentioned such as we have an arrangement with RTA, et cetera. So explain this to me. how do we, Banning has not been easy to work with to get any kind of data or reimbursement or tracking from in any way, shape, or form. So how is that not just another big problem for us in dealing with Banning?
The transfer system would ensure that our passengers don't pay twice. That would be the only thing it would solve.
So that'd be good for the passengers, but what does that mean to us in terms of having to get data, or how many transfer passes did you pick up, and how do we audit that in our own review?
The transfers would go into the vault as they board because they could only do it once. They would not be able to go around the system with that same transfer. The agreement that we have, for example, with RTA, when the Route 31 comes into Beaumont, the drivers know that they can take that RTA transfer at Walmart only. And we take that from them in some cases. If it's a monthly pass, we don't. But if they went to, I don't know, Sunset and Banning, and they wanted to get on their bus, our bus, with a RTA transfer, they would be denied. It's a coordinated effort that RTA knows if one of our passengers is at Walmart and they need to get on the Route 31, the drivers know one time only they can get on that day, and vice versa. Without the COA, we won't know how many people there are. We have a general idea, but we don't know right now because we don't have data from Banning, and we've asked. We don't know how many Banning passengers are trying to get into Beaumont. That's what a COA would tell us. A COA, and we would ask our consultant to include that in their study. How many people at Walmart are coming from Banning and getting on a Beaumont bus, and vice versa? But right now, it's a guesstimate.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I know you want to move on, but one last quick comment, and maybe you should add this to the additional comments on their scope, is the entire year that I was on the 2x2 committee, we never had a single 2x2 meeting because Banning wasn't willing to do it in public. Their argument was that they didn't believe it was a Brown Act and that they were not going to have a meeting in public. So we, following the advice of our attorney, never had a 2x2. It was always a 1x1, and they just didn't want to talk about this in public. And I think that just sort of plays right into their latest process. But that's, and I'm done. I won't say anymore.
Just one quick thing. The request to remove Route 2 or to remove Beaumont buses out of Banning, does that come from Banning?
Yes.
Do we have that in writing?
I was handed a letter in November of 16 by their community services director, signed by their community services director.
Okay. Just want to make sure we have that in writing, because sometimes that tends to change without being documented somewhere. That's all I have.
All right, so do you have enough direction? And we're looking for direction for additional comments and amendments. And then
just to confirm that on the last 2 pages, the 5 points of the agreement, the proposed agreement, everyone is...
Looks good to me.
Everyone is okay with it. Because what I'm going to do is take this and draft an agreement, a fair media agreement, and then our SRTP, our first round draft, is due in a couple weeks, and so we're going to start the budgeting to remove the Route 2 from that, and then the narrative, of course. Do you want to see the SRTP draft before it goes to RCTC staff, maybe on a consent?
I would like to.
Yeah.
Consent calendar item?
Yeah.
Okay, we normally don't do that because our CTC makes changes, but we can certainly bring it back in just a short form so you can see the direction that we're headed.
We will prepare an RFP that we will present back to council as soon as we can.
For the COA?
For the COA.
Okay.
We'll need to include that in the SRTP and it will be part of operations, and so we'll have to adjust our fare box to reflect that. So but I'll share that with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so moving to, do we need a break or are we good?
And then we are going to add one more comment, which is that Beaumont is going to prepare its own Beaumont Transit Operation COA.
Yes.
Yes. So that'll be point 7 on the comments that go to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would like to
You want a
break.
quick break? Okay, let's take a quick break, 5-10 minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, we're going to be resuming our meeting. We are on action item 14, Potrero Bridge Project Summary and Construction Change Order Update.
Just a quick update to your construction activity, which has been a little bit minimal this past month, but we are still hovering right around that 85% completion on the bridge. We are constructing and pouring the bridge decks, and then from there, as soon as that is complete over the next couple of months, they'll start out some of the finish work. We are still sitting on about $900,000 in contingency. We have a couple items that we will potentially need to bring forward to you that will be closeouts with Caltrans. Some of them are access issues as we did the closures, and so we should have those to you in the next month or so. Happy to answer any questions. Looking like construction's still on timeline for completion in May.
Do we have public comment?
I have no request.
Okay. Question, discussion from council? The only thing I have this day is what can we expect as soon as completion's done as far as any other anything else doing with the Potrero project? We're going to have a time to where we need to kind of go the next route, or are we going to move right away into?
For phase 2,
Yeah.
which would be the interchange ramp portion of the project. Right now, we are not completely funded for that portion. We are working with some developers in the area that have interest in completing those ramps. We have some funds that are on the list for WRCOG to present to the city as part of their future funding plan. But until the funds come through, we will have the plans done. They're working on the plans as we speak. That is a TUMF project. But until we have funds in hand, we won't be able to move forward with construction.
Is it too early to start looking at other methods of grants and so forth, or are we in process of doing that?
No, we'll be what's called in considered shovel ready once our plans are ready, and so we'll start looking at alternatives for all different types of funding.
Okay, good. Okay, I just didn't want this big time of nothing there, so.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments, discussion? All right.
That's on my side is quickly our completion around March. When do you think the public could use that or will be possible?
For the bridge?
Or the bridge, yeah.
We're looking at that May timeline.
Okay.
For completion of construction. As soon as we do complete it, we intend to open the bridge. We'll do a ceremony. And particularly since we're not moving right into construction of the ramps, I think it would behoove us to put that into service.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion for receive and file?
I move that we receive and file the Potrero Bridge Summary and Construction Change Order Update.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Councilmember Lara.
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. And with that, we have item number 15, wastewater treatment plant expansion, renovation, and brine pipeline installation project status update.
Again, this is your monthly update of your wastewater treatment plant and brine line installation. Reach 1, we have seen some significant weather delays. The contractor is requesting over 10 days of weather, and I believe that will go up. That's why I put the plus sign next to the 10. They had not completed their request as of the time that I did this report. So I believe that number is actually going to go up. With the significant rainfall that Beaumont has seen, not only are we seeing wet days, and remember we're going a little bit cross-country with this. Not everything is actually under pavement or in a good drainage area. And so this particular installation, not only from a rainfall standpoint, but from a ground saturation, has been tough as we move through 4th Street. The contractor is looking at some drying mechanisms. I think we mentioned that last month as well. We're still working through some of those, but we should be bringing, back to you where we finally end up with that. They have been working on We've kind of installed some on 4th Street, and then they went to work on the Potrero Bridge section of it, hit some rain. They were hoping to take some of the fill from the Potrero Bridge, mix it with some of the wet back on 4th. That didn't work out so well, so they're looking at a drying agent. So we'll probably be seeing a change order for that, in order, cheaper to do that than remobilize back to that area. Hoping that we come out of the plan and get into 4th, connect to the little bit that we've put in the ground, and then move on down Oak Valley and the canyon. Reach 2, only 6 days of weather. They're a little bit further behind, not from a construction standpoint, but they didn't start their potholing until after the first of the year. And so they have done some work in Loma Linda. We're finalizing our permit in Redlands, so they should start in Redlands here shortly. Loma Linda was very good to work with. They allowed our contractor to move from one location to another. This particular contractor is talking about doing 2 crews as we move forward. So once we get the Redlands permit, we'll start possibly seeing 2 crews move through. Much more urbanized area, so we're not getting the full effects of the rain the way that we are in some of these rural areas that we're trying to install. They're sitting at about 6 weather days. We have 10 in the contract, so that doesn't substantially change their in time period. And so I think we're sitting really good on Reach 2. On the wastewater treatment plant, we've seen much more significant weather delays. They've requested 24 days in February alone. It's a significant number, basically the entire month of working time. We are allowing the contractor to work on city holidays, which the contract does not specifically allow. We approve those on a case-by-case basis. We're doing those to try to make up days where we can get work done, even though it's a city holiday. We're assigning a city staff person to be available and ready in case we have any questions. Again, trying to make up some of these weather days. Again, unfortunately, at the wastewater treatment plant, remember, we're digging holes and we're going, underground, and that's a lot of where the water's coming. So while they are making some progress, they're just not making as significant progress as if it would be dry. We have formed up and we have done some pours out there specific to the MBR building, the grit chambers, and so we're trying to move forward as much as possible in the contractors. But again, they have requested, and we're, by contractual law, have to give them the days that they requested because they are rain days. And so that will move us closer to our deadline with the board. We did have a visit from the regional board staff person last week, walked them through the plant, took them out to the brine line construction set, and went through the entire construction project with them in detail. Let them know that we would probably be requesting some additional days, that we were hoping that the little bit of buffer that we had on the project would be more geared towards needed change orders and compensatory time with a change order as opposed to weather. And unfortunately, we've used them up on weather at this point. He was going to go back and visit with the executive director about that, but unless the rain lets up, which we just got rain tonight, and then we're scheduled for rain again tomorrow and some this weekend, things aren't looking much better for us as we move forward. So happy to answer any questions for you. You do have your 3-week look aheads. I believe it shows you a week back as well, and as well as your financials.
All right, thank you. Do we have public comment?
We do not.
Did we have any for 14?
No.
Okay, council discussion? Questions? Or we'll entertain a motion to receive and file?
I move to receive and file the project updates.
I'll second. Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Action item 16, the 2019-2020 legislative platform. Mr. Warsinski.
situate this so I'm not sitting on the floor. All right, thank you. So Mayor and Council, on February 2nd, that was our City Council workshop where we discussed the draft legislative platform. The council reviewed and discussed the upcoming legislative season and provided city staff as well as towns and public affairs some revisions to that platform. So we went ahead and included those revisions into the draft platform presented tonight. Just to recap for people that may be watching or may have not tuned into the workshop, is that this platform allows towns and public affairs to lobby on behalf of the city on current issues that we know may be coming up, that there is a consensus with the city council on items that we're strictly reviewing or monitoring. They will report those back to us, similarly to the next item on the agenda where we do the legislative update. You'll get those through an update process, and then you can direct staff to go ahead and take action on those unique circumstances or not. But what this allows them to do is if there's a bill that is proposed in the legislature tomorrow, and we know that we're adamantly, or the city council has a consensus to oppose that type of legislation, then they don't need to come back to us and ask us to do something at a future council meeting. They can simply take action and say, look, the city of Beaumont adopted this platform, and they're opposed to this as one of our clients. So that it really allows them to act on our behalf quicker than a more bureaucratic process. So I've contained in the staff report some key principles contained within the platform, and then a list of the different policy statements covering the following areas, and those are listed 1 through 15, and I won't go into those in any detail unless you'd like. But presented to you tonight is the updated legislative platform with all of the revised recommendations that council provided at the workshop. And I can answer any questions. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Public comment on 17? Or 16?
Yes, on 16.
16. All right, with that, I'll open up public comment at 7:47.
Van Roy?
Good evening, council. So this is like just an abrasion. I'm just having one comment here tonight, just a flesh one. I want to just touch base for a second here. And there's a couple, I feel like I want to get out a text editor. And so I had just a few little things here on the economic development. I thought I could just come in here for a moment and just say, the more you advocate for legislative change, through your, League of Cities or whatever, the better. So one area is, as you know, I'm not the only one, but a lot of people are upset about the funding sources for our mellow, our growth, and it's almost all Belarus. So I was hoping you could just keep this ball up in the air for a while, and catch it and run with it if you want. But you could. I think what we need to do is look at alternative sources of funding, and that would be under number 11 in economic development. But that's where I would put it. But anyways, what it means is that, there's talk. I have neighbors who talk about public banking, for example. I don't know if you've heard about it, but, the idea is that the city can become a funding mechanism. I just think that if you could start to say, maybe we shouldn't be stuck with Belarus all the time. That's a narrow type of bond financing. The bond market's the only way we have to go. I just think the consumers like choice. If we have a mortgage, it's always nice when you can go online and shop all your different mortgage lenders. We all understand that. Okay, so the other one is I always want to advocate that you consider the environment in a way that reflects. I'm really serious. There's a lot of people who feel very strongly about this. You'd be surprised how many people. But on number 16, okay, I'm getting my text editor out here, okay? Support legislation that provides funding opportunities focused on coordinating sustainable planning in text editor, open space, and natural resource protections with transportation, housing, and economic development. I mean, if I see the environment, I want to see something that talks about natural areas, natural resources. Let's not forget where our tourist economy is coming from here with, and I'm maybe a broken record, with Joshua Tree National Park generating over, what, $6 million in revenue? So, but we have to consider that we have to do that. And that's as far as I'm going to go. I mean, I just want to focus on those two areas. But let's not forget, you know, the natural areas in our open spaces. Talk about regional parks. I know you had a park section, and I appreciate that. So that's the only two have. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other speakers?
No other speakers.
Okay, we'll close public comment at 7:50. Input or questions from the council?
I have a couple of comments.
Okay, Mr. White.
Mr. Roy, economic development, the Mello-Roos is a local issue at this point. I mean, it's a state law. And we on council have decided, as with you, that we're not in favor of Mello-Roos, but we have no choice with the development agreements. If you had been attending some of our meetings about 4 or 5 years ago, you would have seen us struggle through the fact that we have development agreements that are 20 years old, and the cost to break those development agreements would be an undue burden of millions of dollars to the city. We decided that we were not going to do that. We're going to do our best to mitigate those and modify them, and we have. And I can tell you the only development agreement that we've worked through, we did not have the Mello-Roos as usual. And I know that I'm committed, and I believe the rest of the council is, that we're not in favor of doing Mello-Roos. But at this point, the cost to the city to break those development agreements was not worth it. And it was not in the best interest of the city. And so I just wanted to bring that back because, again, you know, it comes back on us that we're out here trying to raise bonds and create as much money and debt on our citizens, and we're not. We have some goals that we have to meet, and the infrastructure, everyone, as you well know, everyone knows that the infrastructure in Beaumont is way behind the population. And right now, unless there's another way to grow infrastructure without having the developers and the new homes pay for the infrastructure that they bring on us, I don't know another way to pay for it. So, but I do think that we have a number of ways of supporting economic policies and supporting funding mechanisms for economic development. And then, again, same thing, we all would like to have open space, but as we talked in the meeting last time you were here, the city doesn't own property. We can set guidelines through our general plans, and we're doing that, but we can't take people's property and turn it into open space. And I don't think that you would want us to do that, or that you would be proposing, oh, you would want us to take private property and turn it into open space? Okay. The cost for doing that, the litigation costs that we would face, again, would put us back into where we were 3-4 years ago, facing bankruptcy if we tried to start taking private people's property and turning it into open space. That's all the comments I had.
But just to address, the 41 and 42 does address open space in generally. It does say that we'll support efforts to help better our community by providing funding for improving air and water, open space, natural resources. So I think we've got that there.
I agree.
Any other further comments? Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So clarify for me, if you would, please. There's a talk about taking potentially some of the use tax from the counties and distributing it to the cities, you know, the city of origin where the sale happens, and then the city of delivery where the sale is delivered. So what within here would address any potential changes or redirection of taxes so that they would know that Or would you expect them to bring that back to us? I just couldn't tie sales tax to anything in here, so you tell me where, if I miss, or if it's too esoteric.
The admin 8.
8 is a little bit, I mean, Prop 13 is
What
dealing
are we
with
writing
property
here?
tax.
Yeah, that's property.
But
Okay,
it
so-
also talks about tax apportionment proposals. What they were really talking about on that one is trying to potentially assist us in the county-city split agreement on the property taxes. I know that Townsend is familiar with our worries about the user tax because they understand that we
okay.
have point-of-sale facilities, or we may get those because we have the available land for them. On the flip side, we also have a good amount of people that are probably buying things because of our income levels. The city manager and I have already started working with HDL, who is being involved in that process because they represent teen cities throughout California. So they've been asked to help the committee at the statewide level run the pros and the cons on it. So I don't see it specifically under administration or economic development. It's something that I can put on here very easily and just add it in there and just say probably under, let's see here.
Well, I don't know how the rest
We'll stick it under
of the council
administration
Yeah.
and say monitor and evaluate all proposals that deal with sales tax or user tax.
Change in distribution of taxes?
Exactly.
Okay. If the rest of the council is in agreement with that.
Is that strong enough? Is that what you're after? Because I don't think you want to monitor, I think you want to have a policy statement, right? Which
Mhm.
would oppose any changes to that system which would negatively affect the ability of cities to do whatever. Because ultimately the issue is if there's a loss of revenue, particularly with regard to distribution to cities that house those lifestyle centers, then you have to continue to provide those services and you'll lose revenue. So I think the issue is to oppose any legislation or process that would take money away that would otherwise be used to service those businesses, maybe?
Yes, and so if I bring it up to where you say promote fiscal stability and then you give the general description, you say oppose measures that shift local funds to the county, state, or federal governments and/or make city. However, there's a move to actually shift funds to other cities, not county or state. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's kind of not mentioned, this movement now for the cities. And there's a lot of the northern cities, Northern California cities, that really are pushing this redistribution to the cities because they don't have the fulfillment houses that need the use tax, et cetera. So that's why I bring it up.
So maybe it is to oppose any amendments to the redistribution of sales tax that detrimentally affects cities who have to provide services to those businesses and industries.
It sounds okay to me.
Would you like to offer that as a number 10 under admin, as a new number? Do we have discussion on that or oppose?
Does that work out?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mr. White, are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
All right, that's good.
All right. And then I have a minor question about the public safety. We're very specific where we say on the public safety that we want to oppose putting firearms in the hands of the mentally ill, which I think is a great idea. But we don't mention anything else. Like, we don't mention that we propose strengthening of background checks or anything else. It's just that one thing. Is there a reason that we just restricted it to that one comment?
Well, I think we
Which
could.
number is that one?
Okay. now I
Oh,
get
there it is.
I think it's an issue that's awful complex and very,
You want to have it brought back?
no, I think it should be one of the issues that we get updates and reviews when it comes up.
Right.
I don't think we as a council have
Well,
a
that's kind of what I meant by brought back.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
not add, but
Okay,
just-
I'm okay with that. I was just wondering why it was just that one thing.
Yeah, I think everything else.
Okay.
is fine. Well, it'd be under police.
That is
or public.
under police, public safety. That is down towards the bottom at, I think. No, it isn't. It's not in the public safety, it's in the earlier portion of the document where you talk about, you do the general. Enhance quality of life through adequate public safety. Protect public safety by reducing access to firearms for the mentally ill.
What number is that?
It's
That is number 4.
Roman 4.
Guiding principle.
Roman numeral 4.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be my assumption that the council does not have a consensus on going much further than that.
Okay. Chief, what do you think? You're okay with it just the way it is?
Not familiar with.
Okay. All right.
I don't know that this is a chief of police issue. I think it's more of an elected official and how we guide our city.
Well,
I just want to know if he has concerns about it.
So my question for you, Ms. Carroll, is are you looking to put more wording in? Are you offering us an additional point to put under police? Or,
I'm okay with if the way that we've worded it just means that if they want to do legislation on strengthening background checks, that it comes back to us, I'm okay with that. If that's the way that we understand it to be. Is that the way we understand it?
well, I think the
Okay,
fact
so
that,
I'm okay with
I think the fact that there's no position means that there's no
All right.
proactive involvement
I'm
with
okay
it.
with that.
So,
We can advise Townsend that that's a point of interest in that we would like them to include in their updates any proposed changes or legislation
Kind of
on
amendments.
those issues. So y'all can look at those on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right, so right now we have the document with the amendment to the taxes for number 10 under administration, and we had consensus on that. So is there a motion to approve the platform with the amendment?
I move to approve the platform with the amendment to the item number 10 under administration.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Councilmember Lara.
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Brings us to legislative updates and discussion. Item 17.
Take one if you want. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm passing out the monthly report from Townsend, so I'll wait till you get one, and then I'll go over some key items in there. I'll spare you the pain of going through all 10 pages. So of note, we've added a grants update section on the monthly report because we're starting to finalize and make progress on the individual departments working with Townsend on the grants. It's taken a little bit of time to get up to speed from their side on what we're doing, as well as we had to wait for grants to be opened. They're not just open all the time, or some of them are not. So on the first one, the city and Townsend submitted a grant application for the Beaumont Sports Park. There's money allocated out there. It's highly competitive, but what we've applied for is around $2.9 million for improvements at the sports park. So let's all cross our fingers that we get that one awarded. Like I said, it is highly competitive, so we'll see kind of where we're at on that process. We're also starting to work with them on the new Prop 68 funding, and there was a workshop that our consultant went to, and they'll be advising staff on what the new criteria is for that level of funding or that round of funding. Those applications are going to be due by August of this year, so we're working on those ones. And as we continuously progress on other grants that city staff and Townsend are working on, they'll be included on these monthly reports as we move forward. The state political update, they're very busy, or they were busy preparing bills by the submission deadline. So you can see quickly that there was over 2,500 bills introduced, more than last year. What I find interesting is that several hundred of those bills don't have substantive information or language contained with them. They're basically placeholder bills. And if you're familiar with how the state does things, is they will then amend those at the last minute and then propose some legislation that we need to take action on quickly. We did change the law where they have to give us 30 days to review those, so they can't just act on bills that literally the ink is not dry yet, which is what they used to do. So that's one of the reasons for the legislative platform, is in case these several hundred bills get changed to topics or issues that we're in favor of or opposing, we now have the platform in order to take quick action. So there's a list of the key upcoming deadlines. I already went over the state of the state address. One thing that did occur is the Department of Finance released their first economic update for 2019. I kind of touched on it at I think it was the last meeting, where there was this discrepancy on revenues versus what was budgeted. We're still seeing that, or at least Townsend is reporting that from us. So Department of Finance is still seeing a lag in the revenues on the state side. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. Also, there's the accessory dwelling units codes that's coming out. So I know that staff and predominantly planning departments reviewing accessory dwelling units, how that's going to affect us on that topic. What else do we got? We went over wildfire, emergency response, preparedness, and CAL FIRE. Some priority legislation that's been identified as AB 11 through, I think it's CHOI, which is a new community redevelopment law. So we'll see how that works. AB 147, Burke, is dealing with use taxes, but not the use taxes that Councilmember Carroll identified. These are out-of-state use taxes, so they're trying to come up with new thresholds in which online marketplaces collect use tax on behalf of third-party sellers. You can typically see that on Amazon, or Walmart allows that, a third-party seller that's not affiliated with Walmart on walmart.com. So the state's trying to crack down on those users. There's one that I'm sure the chief's aware of, AB 222, which is cooperation with immigration authorities. There's our fun Senate Bill 230, the Caballero bill on use of force. Yeah. And then there's, which one was the other one that I saw? Oh, I think it was just under a summary where they were talking about another conflicting one on use of force. So not the 230 that we're looking to support. It's the other one that could be an issue for our local law enforcement or law enforcement across the state. Federal update very quickly. I won't go into President Trump's State of the Union address, but he did talk about an infrastructure bill, which is one of the platforms he ran on. And if you go through the State of the Union, there isn't too much substance in terms of what that would be. So I don't think it's been drafted or framed at this point in time. And then there's another priority that he made a statement on, which is lower cost of health care and prescription drugs, but protecting patients with pre-diagnosed or pre-existing conditions. So another bold statement that received support across both sides of the aisle, but not much substance in how that was actually going to play out. So we'll keep watching that one. And lastly, if you want to go into cannabis, there's a was it Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, which would provide safe harbor for financial institutions to serve cannabis-related businesses. So it's kind of a workaround in terms of the federal law that exists today, classifying it as a Schedule I drug, and that no federally backed financial institution can accept monies from them. This would be I wouldn't call it a loophole, but a workaround where they're not touching the Substance Act. They're dealing with a new act to allow banks to take in marijuana-related money. So we'll see that one. And apparently Townsend reported that there's good support in the House, but it's unclear whether the Senate will actually pass that thing if it gets to them. And then the last thing I had highlighted is just this issue with the 2020 census and the question of immigration status on the census, and that's been something that's been a hot topic of public debate. There's obviously the president's pushing to include the question. There's been pushback from certain areas, I would say specifically California, on not asking that question because research has been shown to predict people will not fill out the census or respond to the census if that question's on it in an area that may have undocumented immigrants. So what that means to the state of California and for us is that if people are not willing to participate in the census, our state's population is lower. And that means all of our per capita revenue coming from Washington is going to be arbitrarily lower because no one wanted to participate in the census. So it's, like I said, a hot topic on both political parties, but from our perspective, at least from my perspective as staff, is having that question on there is probably not going to help us get per capita money from Washington, D.C., all politics aside. So that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments on 17? Copy of the council report here.
Yes, sir.
You bet. Okay, discussion or questions for Kyle? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you, Mr. Warsinski. Right, brings us to council reports. Any volunteers today?
I'll go first.
Thank you.
I have nothing to report.
I'll go second. I have
Okay.
nothing to report.
Oh, my goodness.
Uh-oh, pressure's on now.
Yes. Anyone else with nothing?
You,
All right.
I have one thing real quick.
Okay, we'll go with Mr. Laura.
All right. Attended the WRCOG meeting on Monday. Aaron Sassy with the League of Cities indicated that there's a bill, AB 213, where it has to do with the potential funding tax revenue allocations that City of Beaumont may be eligible for. And we're on that?
Yes.
All right. That's all I had to report, sir.
Okay, Mr. Santos.
The only thing is, I'd like to say, excellent job on the, on the rainy days. And our drainage system is really working better compared to last year. And we're doing an excellent job on that. Thank you so much for all your stuff and our stuff too. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, for me, I attended the Financial and Audit Committee yesterday. We'll have just a brief update from our treasurer. I attended the CHP task force concerning the goals of the committee, and we have a liaison set up between our PIO and their PIO in order to see how the city can help the CHP further their goals to reduce traffic collisions, especially along the I-10 corridor and along the Highway 79. The captain might be giving a presentation at some point to kind of give you a little background of what the task force is all about. The RCA I attended just basically talked about some acquisition property. Beaumont was number 2 in their $1 million contribution to the mitigation fees to the RCA's budget. So that was interesting. And lastly, our western spadefoot frog was our species of the month. Thank you so much for that.
Who was number one?
The Riverside County was number one technically. Yeah.
Right behind Riverside.
And then we just beat out Moreno Valley by $6,000, so Moreno Valley's right behind us.
Mayor, what was the species, endangered species?
It was the western spadefoot frog. Spadefoot frog.
Must have been a riveting meeting. Oh, thank you. I'll be here all night.
Well, the pressure's on him. He can do no worse than that.
They do have another spot at the LEAC Comedy
Do they?
Show. Like, March 21st, Thursday.
That's right. I got to talk about that. Okay, so we have economic development update.
I don't have much tonight. That's why I went a little bit long on the legislative update. I apologize.
Okay.
I'll shorten it for the next meeting, but we'll have a Economic Development Committee meeting next week.
All right. Very well. Treasurer report.
Yeah, 3 items. Our revenue and expenses, when we're looking at the budget, looks pretty good if you take into consideration the timing of the revenues coming in. Because when we looked at February, they came in, the January ones came in February 1st. But otherwise, we're on budget, pretty much. You can feel comfortable with that. Fraud policy. There's been a development of a fairly comprehensive fraud policy for our internal staff. In fact, training, 2 sessions will be conducted, I think, this week. And there is a commitment to also get training, the fraud process for external people. So we have internal. We don't have people from the outside yet with this process. And it was thought we need to get the one part working well, but there's a commitment in 6 months to come back with a policy for the outside. Internal audit control, findings of the 2017 audit have been addressed. As was discussed at the last meeting, there were a couple issues that had not been resolved, and now all the items have been addressed. That's all.
Oh, sorry about that. Any questions for the treasurer? I have a quick question. So I noticed your signature on the warrants starting up. So how's that going? Are you you feel comfortable with that review process?
You want to pull the microphone?
Mic closer to you.
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's just a matter of going through and getting familiar with our vendors and who they are, what they represent, and everything at this point. And the staff has been very helpful in addressing my questions. I go in with a list of questions, and they've helped with that. So I'm comfortable.
Okay, very well, thank you. Okay, with that, city clerk report.
Yes, during the month of February, we had a grand total of 28 public records requests. I think that comes out to 1 a day, more than capably handled by our deputy city clerk. That's all I have.
Is that, Nicole, is that a record? Is that one of our lowest numbers of public records requests?
It might be one of them.
Okay.
City attorney report.
Yes, attached at tab 18 in the packet is a list of pending litigation against the city that does not include a list of any litigation that's been initiated by the city. The first item is the HUP cases, which you're familiar with, which are down to 1 consolidated case that's at pretrial phase. And then we have the Urban Logic versus City of Beaumont case that is set for trial in May. And then AC Equipment versus City of Beaumont, that matter was settled, and then it was submitted to the County Oversight Board for approval. County Oversight Board approved it, and so we're now working to process that settlement forward. We have to submit it to DOF, and so we've been dealing with that process. And then Elijah Scott Talley versus the City of Beaumont, that's in the pretrial stage. The Serato versus City of Beaumont matter, it's the case involving an alleged pothole in the city. That's also in the pretrial stage. That's early in the litigation. And then Angela Santa Cruz versus City of Beaumont, that's also pretrial stage. I think we have a tentative trial date in that case for, I believe, November. And then also, I just wanted to let you know that at the next closed session, at the next council meeting, our plan is to have a closed session discussion regarding some claims that the city is pursuing against third parties. Specifically, we'll be discussing the Urban Logic matter. We have a lot of work that's being done to prepare for the trial in May on that case, so we're going to give you a detailed update in closed session at that time. And then also, Mr. Parton and I attended a mediation session with former city auditor Moss, Levy, and Hardsheim, and we're going to give you an update in closed session on the results of that effort. And then we have pending litigation that the city has initiated against former bond counsel McFarland and Anderson. And also, we have a claim, not litigation yet, but a claim and a tolling agreement with Norton Rose. And so we'll be providing you with an update on those matters.
Thank you. Questions for the attorney? All right, city manager report.
All right, well, moment I guess y'all been waiting for tonight. It means we're nearing the end, right? So the Western spadefoot frog, not funny. It's just not funny. So I'll proceed on. We did finish up the bond sales for the Argent project. That's the 2016-1 today. We actually had a little bit better market results than we had hoped. So our total all-in TIC on that came in about 4.19%. We were looking about 4.36, 4.33. So it came a little bit better. It generated about 60,000 more in project funds that will go to benefit and allocate and help reimburse Argent for their projects. So we're in the final process now of verifying the reimbursement items that they've requested. We look to have our funding in hand early next week, and then we presume we'll be receiving a request for reimbursement very soon thereafter. So we are in the process of auditing that financial information that was submitted. But anyway, just congratulations to you guys because you're just one step closer. If you recall, there was about $13 million of authorized bond issuance within that issue. When you looked at the bonding capacity within the project, it came in at right around a little less than $9 million. And so you're funding and finishing out funding for that phase significantly below what was otherwise authorized. So again, it's meeting your criteria, level debt service, no 2% escalators. It's hitting all those components. So again, kind of goes back to, I think, the earlier question that council's been very active in working very proactively to try to mitigate those impacts of the Mellows moving forward. So anyway, that concludes my report for you tonight.
Any questions for city manager? All right, future agenda items. I have one. I'd like, if you could, perhaps at the next meeting would be nice, give a kind of an update on our Highland Springs project, kind of give the opportunity of council to discuss, to see where we're at on that, as far as all the entities involved and where we go from here.
So are you talking about specifically the left turn pocket as well as the Joshua Palmer realignment?
That's correct.
All those components?
Everything that has to do with that whole project.
I'm on board with that. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, if seeing none, then we will adjourn our meeting at 8:23.